What's up, guys? CJ Kid 1231 back again with another review. This time, Friday the 13th Part 2. Now, this was not directed by Sean Cunningham. It was directed by Steve Miner, who will go on to direct this film and the next installment, Part 3. And this is also the first appearance of Jason as the killer, not with the hot hockey mask though. It's with the elephant Headsack. And an interesting thing about this film is that this is usually debated along with Part 4 and Part 6 on which is the best Friday film. I mean, Part 4 and 6 come up more often than not, but this film also comes up too. And another thing is, I think there was a beef between Warrington Gillette, who played Jason when he was unmasked at the end when he burst through, which we'll get to in a second, and Steve Dash. And I don't know if that would be Steve Dash played Jason the rest of the other times in the film, for the majority of the film. The thing is, I don't know if they rekindled it before Steve Dash passed away or not. So, hopefully they did, because it's really, I mean, I can understand why, but it's a role, I suppose. It's not, to me, I don't want to say it's not that big of a deal because I'm not an actor or stuntman, so it could be a really big deal, but whatever. And also another important thing to note is that Tom Savini did not come back to do the special effects on this film for the simple fact that he disagreed with the fact of Jason being the killer, because he felt that Jason was just more so of a concept to scare the crowd type of thing, like, because in the original story Jason is dead, he is not even alive. So, but whatever. So anyhow, he went to go on to do the special effects for The Burning, which is like pseudo Friday the 13th in a sense, but it's basically it deals with the story of Cropsey and whatnot, and maybe we'll get into that one day too. But for now, let's actually get into the film. So we open up with a little girl walking in the puddle of water, singing the Itsy Bitsy Spider, only for her mom to call her back in. And as her mom calls her back in, we see another set of feet stomp into the puddle, and this is who we are supposed to be thinking is Jason. Now the thing about this is, behind the scenes, even though that's supposed to be Jason, I think that was a woman walking up towards the house that he eventually walks up towards. So yes, a woman actually played Jason before. And inside the house, we see Alice from the first film basically having a nightmare slash flashback of basically the climax of the previous film, with her running into all the dead bodies, and then the confrontation with, Mrs. Voorhees, and then getting drowned by Jason, only to wake up and say that, they didn't find any boy in the lake or anything like that. And she wakes up from the nightmare, and the phone rings, and as the phone rings, essentially, she goes to pick it up, and it's her mom, and she's talking with her mom about how she feels like she needs to kind of go back out near the camp or something, and in this house to stay and clear her head for a few days, because this is the way that she feels she could face her fears. So, her mom get into a pseudo argument, and then she hangs up the phone, and I think the next thing that happens is she goes to shower. And when she goes to shower, she essentially hears a noise, and she then stops the shower and goes to check out what exactly is going on. And as she's doing that, she goes towards the kitchen and picks up a pick, like one of those sharp pick things, thin, sharp weapons, to kind of defend herself in case anything happens, especially what she just went through. And so she goes towards the window, which is open, and as she approaches it, the cat comes and kind of jump scares her and us as the audience as well. So she sighs in relief, and kind of is like, oh, I'm gonna feed the cat. I don't know if that's her cat first of all or not. So yeah, she goes to do that, but as she goes to do that, she opens the fridge, and guess what she finds in there? The head of Pamela Voorhees, who she chopped off, which, first of all, I'm surprised the cops didn't find that at the crime scene, but whatever. Anyways, it's in the fridge, and she's screaming like holy hell, only for Jason to come and basically pick her brain out with the ice pick. And then that essentially ends the pre-credit scene, and then the Friday the 13th title comes up. And it's kind of the same as the last intro from the first film, except this time part 2 explodes, and then that's when the credits roll up, where it's all black and white, and right credit goes here, starring this person, starring that person, starring this person, that person, this, you know. I think they will continue that trope all the way up until part 7, where the credits are like here, then here, then here, then here, then here. So, anyways, then we open up to a truck with two couples, Sandra and Jeff, going and stopping in front of some, I guess, store or barn house, and they go to the payphone to make a collect call to one of their friends because they're having a counselor meeting near the camp. And while they're doing that, they run into, guess who? Crazy Ralph. And he tells them that they're doomed. And, you know, the thing is, the thing that happened with Alice happened 2 months after the original film. And now the scene we're talking about now takes place 5 years later after the original film. So for the past 5 years, Crazy Ralph has been going around telling people that they're doomed and whatnot. So, first of all, I don't know if that has to be his occupation or something, because that's just crazy. But it made me laugh a little bit, like, wow, this old man has been riding around in his little bicycle telling people they're doomed for like 5 years, maybe even longer than that. But anywho, so while they're busy dealing with that, their truck gets towed by another tow truck, and they decide to chase this tow truck all the way around the corner, only to find out that it's Ted, who is another character that we've come to know as we get, you know, more into the film. And it was basically a whole joke, essentially. It was a whole prank. So then Sandra, Jeff, and Ted go all the way out and drive out into where the camp is. But on their way, they find this big log that Jeff and Ted need to move. But then Sandra finds a sign that says Crystal Lake, or Camp Blood as they call it now. And Ted, having heard about what happened, kind of jokingly tells him, oh, you don't want to know what happened there. And Sandra gets kind of intrigued, but they move along anyway. So as they move along, they meet up with a guy named Paul Holt, who's kind of like the head counselor, I guess. And he's essentially basically holding this meeting with the camp counselors and all that. And this is where we get introduced to the rest of the cast of the characters. So we already talked about Sandra, Jeff, and Ted, and of course Paul, but then we have Terry, who's the tomboy, Scott, who's like has the hots for Terry, he's kind of like a pervert, Mark, the wheelchair guy, and Vicky, who has the hots for Mark too. And I believe, is there anybody else? Oh, and the main protagonist of the film, Ginny Fields, who's like a psychiatrist, I think, or something like that, who arrives late in the red car and whatnot. And essentially, you know, around this point in time, after a couple of minutes after she arrives, we kind of get the idea that Paul and her have a thing going on, like they're a couple and whatnot. So, anyways, I'm looking at my notes, by the way, if you keep seeing me look away. Right. So now, later that night, Paul, in classic campfire session, gathers all the camp counselors around the campfire, and he tells the story about Jason and the legend that the camp has, and then basically kind of goes through essentially what happened in the first film. Like, he talks about the legend of what happened 5 years prior, and what happened to Alice, and how she kind of disappeared after she survived the massacre 2 months later, and whatnot. He kind of leaves it like ambiguous, like he's still out there somewhere maybe. And this is where Ted kind of comes in with like a spear and an Indian monster mask that scares everybody. And it seems like Ted and Paul were on it the whole time, so everybody's kind of creeped out and whatever. But then they all laugh about it eventually, and then they all end up going into the cabin, the Pacnic Lodge or something, and they're all kind of chilling. But while they're chilling, from first person point of view, we see what we come to know to be as Jason kind of like peering and stalking them from outside, looking through the windows and whatnot. So, anyways, Jenny then afterwards kind of tells Paul that she's going to leave and go and take it in for the night. So as she goes to take it in for the night and kind of like get ready to go to bed, she's scared by Paul, who I guess followed her and I guess wanted to spend some alone, intimate time with her, because they started making out at the doorway. And by the doorway of the porch, a couple of feet away, is Crazy Ralph spying on them like some old pervert from like behind a pole or a tree that's like a couple of feet away from the entrance porch, like. And they're at the doorway too, so I'm surprised they don't notice him or even dare to like peek out to see who's around. But anyways, he turns and hides, and then from out of nowhere, he gets his throat latched on with barbed wire and is being choked to death by Jason. So essentially, this is the first kill of the film. This is where the body count starts. And that's another thing. Jason is like behind the tree, so if Ginny and Paul wanted to, they could have stopped kissing and saw him, or I'm surprised they didn't notice Crazy off like gargling or gagging, but whatever. And the porch light was on. I'm surprised, like, that scene was just like weird to me, but whatever, it's a film. After that, basically the next day, after jogging, having lunch, and then going to swim, Sandra convinces Jeff to go and, walk around Camp Blood, and Jeff really doesn't want to, but she convinces him anyway. So they go into the camp, and they're walking around, and essentially, as they walk around, they find Terry's dog, Muffin. Yeah, she has a dog in this film, and the name's Muffin, and they find the dog kind of mutilated on the ground with its chest cage and guts opened up, and while they're kind of like looking and observing it, they get caught by this cop named Deputy Winslow, and they're caught red-handed. So Deputy Winslow kind of takes him back to Paul, who kind of essentially, it kind of becomes an argument between Deputy Winslow and Paul because, Deputy Winslow is kind of shocked that he's not like disciplining them as serious as he feels they need to be, where Paul is kind of like, I'll deal with them on my own time. I mean, I'm not saying what they did verbatim or what they said verbatim, but just what the whole feel of the scene was. So anyways, Deputy Winslow's pissed, and he tells him that he needs to keep control of his people or he'll have to put him in jail. So as Deputy Winslow kind of leaves the camp, he leaves and he drives off, but then as he's driving out of the camp, he notices a guy in like a sack running into the campgrounds of Camp Blood. So here he goes again, trying to chase one of the counselors, probably playing another trick again. So as he's chasing after this guy, by the way, this scene was really creepy. He chases after this guy or girl or whatever. It's Jason, but, we don't know that, or we're not supposed to know that yet. So he chases him and it leads him into a cabin. And this cabin is really creepy. It's beat down, it's broken toilet, broken pipes. And he enters this room where he sees like a shrine of a headless woman, a sweater, and candles around it. And this is what we would come to know as the head of Pamela Voorhees from the first film. So, yeah, it definitely rotted since when Alice saw it in the fridge and now. And he's shocked, and as he's just like at shock of what he's seeing, from right behind, Jason nails him with the sharp edge of the hammer. There's a flat edge and there's a like sharp curved edge, and it goes right into his head too. So it's like, can't really watch that scene without going like. So anyway, it's a painful scene to watch. So that's it for Deputy Winslow. He's dead now. Now basically, later that night, Paul decides he wants to take the rest of the counselors out, and it seems like this must have been in a span of days, because I think he says this is the last night and he wants to take them out as a treat, so they'll have a counselor's night out on the town. So as he's asking who wants to go, he demands that Sandra and Jeff stay behind, because now that's his punishment for them not obeying him and telling them not to go into Camp Blood and having them have to go through the whole thing with Deputy Winslow. So Sandra and Jeff stay automatically. Meanwhile, Terry decides she wants to stay because, I guess she doesn't want to go out. And Scott, since having the hots for her, decides to stay too. And then Mark wants to stay because he just doesn't want to go either. And Vicky decides to stay too for the same reason. So Paul, Ginny, and Ted all leave out to this diner bar. And they kind of go and have their own little party. And then Terry says she wants to go for a walk. So Terry decides to go for a walk, but instead she ends up going from walking to deciding to swim naked in the lake. And as she swims naked in the lake, Scott, like a pervert, decides to go and take her clothes away and hide them. So when she comes out and tries to look for them, he appears from out the bushes, looking at her in all her naked glory and teasing her, and throws some doesn't even throw clothes at her, throws some underwear garment or pants garment, like some swimsuit wet garment or something like that. She puts it in, chases him, and as he's backing away, he gets caught in like a rope-like trap, and he's now swinging upside down. And seeing this as like some sort of revenge, he's begging to like be cut down, and she's only gonna do it if he cuts the crap and all that stuff. So he promises, of course, and then she essentially goes to look for something to cut him down with. But as she's doing that, he then gets caught by Jason and has his throat slit while upside down with the machete. So now he's dead. So as Terry's going around looking for something to cut him down with, she comes back only to find him dead upside down with his throat slit. And she screams for holy hell, and as she runs away, Jason comes from out the bushes in first person point of view, and all we see is her scream, and then it goes basically right back. It transitions from that shot to the diner shot. So essentially her kill's off screen. That's probably like the worst kill of this whole film, which I guess makes sense because you don't see it. Anyways, back at the bar, Ginny, this is one of the most interesting scenes in the film. Ginny basically gives an exposition and a deep dive into why, if the legend is real, why Jason is the way he is if he were alive. You know, the whole fact that, you know, he was a lonely kid, he didn't really go to school, didn't have a lot of friends, he drowned, and his mother, in retaliation, out of love, decided to try to kill these kids, and then she gets killed, and whatnot. And essentially, you know, Ted and, Paul and Ted kind of like write her off a little bit. You know, Paul is just like looking at her like, you really took that story as serious. Like, he's basically saying that Jason is just a legend and that's it. So, anywho, after that, they kind of go back and basically we transition back into the cabin. Sandra and Jeff decide to go do their own thing. Meanwhile, Vicky decides to go freshen up for Mark at her own cabin or whatever. And as she's doing that, Mark, after a few minutes, hears some sort of noise. And essentially, he goes out on the porch to check out if it's actually Vicky. Now, at this point in time, there's a thunderstorm. So while he goes out to check and look around, from all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he gets whacked in the face with a machete, and this is the famous scene that you've probably seen in some Friday the 13th scene collages, where it's a wheelchair guy rolling back down through the stairs, which is kind of sad when you think about it. It's like back in the late 70s and early 80s, not even the crippled people got spared, like they got it too. I mean, if you think about it, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Franklin got it, so you know what I mean. So yes, Mark is dead now. And then it transitions back to Jeff and Sandra. I guess they were finished having sex and whatever. And Jason, having dispatched Mark, decides to go into the cabin now with nobody else in there. Because remember, Vicky's freshening up, so. As he goes, he takes the spear that Ted was pranking everybody with earlier, picks it up from the wall, and marches upstairs. And unfortunately, with only Sandra being able to see Jason coming, she gasps, but it's too late. Her and Jeff get spiked through the bed with the spear, which is an awesome kill when you think about it. Which I think they actually got that from another horror Italian film a couple of years earlier. I'm not really sure what the name of it is, but still, it's a cool kill nonetheless. And it made it more popular, so now Jason's done with those two. So Vicky comes back, and she basically is looking for Mark, and she can't find him, so she thinks he's upstairs, which I don't know why, since he's in the wheelchair. How is he going to get up there without some sort of assistance? But she does anyways, and as she goes, she looks, and I think she sees someone hiding under the covers. She sees someone hiding under the covers, thinking it's Mark, and as she gets closer, all of a sudden Jason comes out, and this is the first time we see Jason in the sack. In all his Headsack glory, we see him, he stands up, and she screams and backs away into the hanging dead body of Jeff. And instead of taking her time to run out, she instead stands there with her hands in the defense position as Jason slowly marches towards her with a knife. Which was always stupid to me because she had enough time to run, but no, I'd rather just stand there, go like this, and get stabbed. and then she's done for. So then I guess Ted decides to stay behind and at the bar. I think maybe he tries to get the other counselors to go with him home, I believe. But anyway, Ginny and Paul head back to the cabin first. And as they go back, they look around for everybody. They go upstairs, and Ginny finds a mattress full of blood, which I think is the mattress that Jeff and Sandra got spiked through. And as Paul goes to investigate further, Ginny notices that Jason is in the corner of the room. And before Jason goes to attack, Paul kind of maneuvers and parries the attack, and then him and Jason are wrestling to the ground. And for a minute, it looks like it's a struggle, but then Jason actually gets the best of him, and he goes after Ginny, who closes the door on him. And as she's holding the door, trying to prevent him to open, she tries to reach for the window that's on the side of her to kind of climb out of that and escape from there. But then Jason bursts his hand through the window, and she's scared and she runs, and she jumps out, I think, another window, and she goes into a red car, tries to start that up, and then Jason chases after her and kind of opens up the roof of the car with a pitchfork. But then she kicks the door open, knocking him over, and she runs. And then she finds another yellow car, and she tries to open that up. Now that won't open up. So she decides to hide because she sees Jason coming, and Jason's looking around, doesn't find her, so he just goes on his way, and Ginny decides to run the opposite way. Thinking that she outsmarted him, she instead gets caught by surprise when Jason lunges at her, but misses entirely. So she runs a little bit further ahead, but hides up behind a bush this time. So then when Jason goes to chase after her, she kind of turns and nut shots him, and he's down for the count for a couple of seconds. And then she runs. So let me see. So as she runs, essentially, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the notes because I'm kind of... Alright, good. So now they're running, and basically, this is a good cinematography thing here. Basically, the scene switches from Ginny running to the moon to Jason running to the moon, and it gives you the feeling that this chase is going on all night, for hours. Who knows how long they've been chasing each other for, but it seems like a mighty long time. Anywho, Jason finally enters a cabin, and he stalks and looks around, and we eventually see Ginny underneath a bed. But the thing is, because there's a rat crawling around in front of her, it spooks her out, and as Jason's about to leave, Ginny kind of pees and wets herself, and pees dripping from underneath the bed. And I don't know how Jason kind of hears it or how he's even aware of it, but he notices it. And as Ginny looks around, Jason's not in the distance anywhere. She crawls out for safety, only to see Jason standing on a chair about to spike her. But then the chair leg breaks, and he stumbles and he falls. This is by far the most clumsiest Jason's been in the whole series. And she runs for a chainsaw, which she was using to cut down wood earlier, and damages his forearm. And as he's down and damaged, she then takes a wooden chair, and back shots him with the chair, WWE style, and then runs. Right? Now, basically, Ginny runs, and she ends up in the cabin Deputy Winslow was in earlier, with the creepy head shrine. And as she notices Jason chasing after her through a window, she goes and locks herself in the room where Pamela's head shrine is. And as Jason's trying to break in, she decides to use psychological warfare, which is probably the smartest way anybody's dealt with Jason thus far, or even for the rest of the series, that matter. She puts on the sweater, and as Jason breaks in, she kind of imitates being the mom, Pamela, and it actually works. He's very submissive at this point, and as she's about to deal the death blow with the machete, Jason realizes his mother's head is still in the shrine and blocks the machete, which knocks it out of her hand and basically damages her leg with this weapon that miners use to hit rocks. I forget what it's called, but she's damaged. And as Jason's about to deliver the death blow, Paul from out of nowhere just comes in at the last minute and wrestles Jason all around the barn until eventually Ginny gets the machete and delivers the final fatal blow on the shoulder to Jason, right as Jason was about to deliver the death blow to Paul. So now he's knocked out, and they take the burlap sack off his face to reveal off screen his face. and they're very disgusted by it, so they leave. Paul carries Ginny to a cabin. I'm not gonna say Pac-Man Lodge because I don't think it was Pac-Man Lodge. It was some random cabin. It's kind of like lick the ruins and recoup what they just went through. But then they hear a noise at the door, and essentially they don't know who it is, but being what they just went through, it's probably Jason. So they're armed to the teeth right now. And as Paul goes to open the door, Ginny gives him the signal to open it so that if it is Jason, they attack. And then ends up being Muffin, which is crazy because Muffin was dead half an hour earlier in the film. But Muffin's alive. And as Muffin runs to Ginny, Jason bursts through the back window, grabs Ginny, and we see him with his like decrepit face, like elephant-sized head with like caveman hair and messed up teeth. It's really creepy looking. And then we switch to the scene of the ambulance putting Ginny in the ambulance truck and driving away. And Paul is nowhere to be found. And that's pretty much the end of the movie. Which, fun fact, I think the reason why Paul wasn't there is because towards the end of the film, I think Paul had beef with the filmmakers. So he walked out, I think. But that's the end of the film. Now, my final thoughts on this film is that it's way scarier and better than the first one. Way more better. It's better paced, too. It's a lot more action-packed. And I think Jason's way better than Pamela was in the first film, especially for an antagonist. Way better. I would give it a watch. It's definitely one of the best Fridays. Yeah, it is, I could say. I don't know if I'd put it up there with 4 or 6 for that matter, but I would have to rewatch them. So I guess we have to rank them. I don't think I ranked it the first Friday. Out of 5, I give the first Friday 3, maybe a 3, 3.5. I'd give this one a 4. Yeah, so Friday the 13th gets, part 2 gets 4 out of 5. And that's it, man. Next up is Friday the 13th part 3 in 3D. So hopefully that'll be out by next week if I have a chance. You know, a lot's been going on, so in between weeks I've been uploading videos instead of in between days like I'm really supposed to. But anyway, before time runs out, I want to say thank you guys. CJK123, like and comment. Remember, subscribe only if you feel like it's worthy of it, because subscriptions are earned, not asked for. So with that being said, CJK123 out. Love you, and be at peace, and hopefully you're around to see the next video.